guy was a legend, dude.
Well, I mean, got to wonder what happens when guys don't hit that injury.
Yeah, hit the injury, and then Cincinnati's just a black hole at that point.
Yep.
And he was one of college football's best players. Got robbed of a Heisman.
Woo! And we're back at the Sports Experience Podcast. I'm Chris Quinn with my friend Dom DiTolla. Just a couple of comics talking about sports. And today we're talking about like you just said, a legendary college football player and one everybody looks at as a what if for a pro.
Yeah, he's almost like the Charlie Ward of FSU receivers, only without that Heisman. But, I mean, it was his fault that he didn't get it, but he was still the best player in college football the year that he should have won it.
Absolutely. We're talking Peter Warrick.
Yep, Peter Warrick, born June 19th, Juneteenth. Just celebrated that. 1977 in Bradenton, Florida. I've actually been there before. Went there over in March. It's on the west coast between Tampa and Fort Myers.
Oh,
actually.
nice. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of a baseball town. It's where the Pirates play baseball.
But, that's where they play their spring ball.
Yeah,
I get
it's
you.
Still Florida, so
Yeah.
it's football is king as far as the whole state. Goes to Southeast High School. Plays football, basketball, and track.
Well, this guy is just one of those overall ridiculous athletes.
He dominates everything he does in high school.
Exactly. I imagine he could have gone on and played pro basketball. So that's
Possibly.
Well, at least like college basketball. That's what I meant.
Yeah, if FSU wanted him to play
Yes.
basketball, he probably could have. Height is a little bit of an issue for him as
Yes.
far as that goes.
But speed.
Speed, yeah, quite the speed.
And that's why we see him on that track and with that long jump was my other thought with the basketball.
Yeah, first team All-State in basketball, Florida Player of the Year, back-to-back state titles, I believe.
Yeah, back-to-back state titles. And
long jumper, long jumper as a junior, 7.16 meters, then as a senior, 7.25, and won 2 state titles with that.
yeah.
First team on the track in the 100 meters, 10.59, which is nothing to sneeze at.
It's pretty ridiculous.
But football is kind of
I was going to say, that's where I was going. His junior year he plays wide receiver.
Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting. His senior year, they put him to quarterback.
Well, probably because, like, if your passing offense isn't, like, super, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like, complicated as far as, like, you know, or you don't have, like, a great quarterback in your system or your program in high school, you'll put your just best athlete back there and let him do whatever the hell he does.
And that, I feel like, really worked out for him because he could quarterback sneak, play the option, and it really shows his athleticism because I feel like high school is all about showing what you can do for recruiting.
Yeah,
the emphasis on winning shouldn't be as much, but it is.
And a lot of guys aren't locked into a specific position,
Exactly.
especially on offense, unless you're like a standalone quarterback. You're just trying to show everybody how athletic and dominant you can be. I mean, as a junior, over 600 yards receiving and 9 touchdowns, but ran for 673 yards and 13 touchdowns his senior year, and over 1,000 passing yards and 13 touchdowns. Like, it kind of reminds me of another, and in my opinion, a future Hall of Famer, former Seminole wide receiver / quarterback, Anquan Boldin.
Oh, yeah.
Anquan Boldin was much bigger, and when we discussed Peter Warrick's pro career and kind of how he was misused in the pros as opposed to how he was in Florida State and what kind of athlete he could have been in the game now, we'll track back to that because Boldin was just a dominant physical specimen.
And I feel like that's what kind of happens with these guys who just aren't 6'3", you know.
Yeah.
They just kind of get that one like ridiculous hit, and it's like he's not coming back from that.
Anquan Boldin was a linebacker playing wide receiver.
Yeah, that's a great. Yeah, I love that.
What he was. But coming out of high school, National Recruiting Advisor had him as the #1 wide receiver and #7 player overall in the 95 class.
Which just makes sense because for a college receiver, I feel like for a couple of years, and we're going to look at it, he was the best.
Yeah, and Florida State at this time, they had kind of, and we may have referred to it in the Charlie Ward episode, they had good groups of receivers, but never like that dominant guy. But in 95, Florida State also has a redshirt player in addition to Warrick. He has to redshirt. He has to sit out in Randy Moss.
Yeah.
Could you imagine Randy Moss at Florida State during this time period?
It's pretty awesome.
Like you have just thunder and lightning right there.
Yeah,
but of course, Moss had his issues.
Yeah.
Pissed hot in a cup and had to go to Marshall. But Warrick, 95, he also redshirts. Only had one rush for 3 yards. So you're just basically like, we have a group of guys like E.G. Green and Kes McCorvey and stuff like that. Like, why do we waste a year of this kid's eligibility? But 96, a year that they go undefeated in the regular season but lose the Sugar Bowl, he kind of starts seeing more playing time, has 22 catches for 467 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Well, this is what we've talked about before, where we see guys getting worked into a system, and after 2 or 3 years, they really reap the fruits from this, because just shoving a guy into a system, especially Peter Warrick, it probably wouldn't work as well. So that's why I like the red shirt the first year. The second year, he starts to get some, and he gets some punt returns, I feel like.
Yeah, and he's a dominant punt returner. And as a receiver, what they're kind of figuring out with him, when you watch him on tape, he does everything well. Like, he knows how to run the correct routes. He has good hands. He's a guy, when you scout him, you say quicker than fast. As his straight line speed isn't elite, it's still fast, but the moves that he makes and how he's able to change directions is fucking incredible. That's the only way to describe it, is he just has very quick feet and can find space, and his field vision, and this is when they're starting to kind of figure it out, he sees things other guys don't with the ball in his hands, and he has a lot of cutback runs and against the grain runs, and their offensive coordinator and offensive staff are figuring out, wow, we just need to get the ball in this guy's hands in space, because space is where he dominates and space is where he puts pressure on the defense. While he can fight off press coverage from college defensive backs, because he's not a particularly large guy.
No.
5'11", little south of 200 pounds. Getting him in space is exactly how you can screw him up. And teams are kind of afraid to play press coverage against him because he is so quick that if he beats the press off the line, he's just gone. He's beaten the defense. So
you just want to get him the ball with a couple of yards and he can kind of figure it out, which I feel like comes back to his punt returning and how you can just kind of see the field and kind of see what's going to happen. And then, like you were saying, on top of that, he's extremely reliable. Because I hate to say it, a lot of the times these guys who kind of run, they kind of make silly plays or they're just not right where they need to be. He was so reliable on top of being one of the quickest guys that you'll ever see.
And this is a year where they're pretty run heavy as far as this is Warrick Dunn's last year there. This is Warrick Dunn's senior season. He balls out because he's an incredible college player and a very awesome pro player.
Yeah.
But 97 comes along. He has 53 catches for 884 yards and 8 touchdowns. And this is where he establishes himself as the number one threat in the offense. In Florida State, another 10-plus win season. I think they only had one loss that year.
Yeah. And like you were saying, Florida State figured him out. So it's a 1-2 with them because this is what I was saying. This next 3 years, he's really one of the top receivers that is always in that,
He was one of my favorite college players to watch, honestly. I mean, he was just exciting. Anytime he touched the ball.
He was exciting. Yeah, that's perfect for him.
He would run routes at all levels of the field. They'd use him on kind of sweeps and reverses, punt returns. It was just like exciting to watch Florida State games because Peter Warrick was playing.
Yeah.
Particularly after Ward and Dunn are gone, because those are your dominant offensive players in the 90s for the Seminoles.
Yeah.
And 98 is when the hype train really starts kicking off for Peter Warrick because he balls out 61 catches, 1,232 yards, and 12 touchdowns. And another 10-plus win season, obviously, again, for Florida State, another Alliance Bowl bid because this was the BCS because this was the first year, and they played in the national championship game. He only had, I think, one catch against Tennessee, but they were playing that game without starting quarterback and elderly Rip Van Winkle individual Chris Winkie. It's the best way I can put it.
That's
but,
beautiful.
Chris Winkie played pro baseball before he went to college, so that's why I make fun of him. I think he's in his late 20s at this juncture. But, yeah, I think Marcus Allison's their quarterback, and he has a long punt return in the game, and he gets tackled by the punter. It could have changed the entire game. Yeah, but, you know, they had lost earlier in that season, but because of the last weekend, we need to do an episode on the last weekend of the 98 college football season. But anyway, they lose the national championship. But as I said before, as big as the hype train was going into 98, 99, his senior season he comes back for, everybody's riding his jock, and with good reason. Like, from day one after that season ended, he's the Heisman favorite. Everybody is like, Peter Warrick is the best wide receiver in college football and probably the best player in college football, and he's primed for an incredible 99 season, and he's having it at the beginning.
Yeah.
He's doing an incredible job.
Well,
and Florida State starts the year as number 1.
I was going to say,
keep winning.
This is what I hate when I hear something like this, and we're going to get into it. Yes. But it's such a ridiculous story, and it happens to people like this sometimes where they obviously are the best in whatever. So he is without a doubt the best receiver, and I think throughout this year he would be the best player.
He is, and we'll get into the Sugar Bowl game. But,
yes, I know that, which is ridiculous.
But let me just say one thing before we kind of get into what happens. There had not been a wide receiver to win the Heisman Trophy since Tim Brown in 1987.
Yeah.
Warrick doesn't win it that year. It won't be until last season in college football 2020 where a wide receiver ever won a Heisman again. So that's 33, 34 years worth of no receiver winning the award. And Peter Warrick, all things considered, should have won it, but get into why.
Well, this is what I was saying was the Heisman voting I've never been a fan of. So Peter Warrick goes in with another football player. Do you have his name? His name.
This guy had a pretty successful pro career. He was their number 2 receiver. And
okay.
He was actually kicked off the team and out of school for this.
Oh, shit.
Lavernius Coles. He had a really good career with the Jets and Washington football team.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Just want to take a quick break to let you know that our Sports Experience podcast is brought to you by Engle Studio here, and they're here in Tucson for all your recording needs.
And they go into a Dillard's. I don't know if anybody remembers what a Dillard's is, but it's like
remember Dillard's?
Exactly.
Werther's Originals.
It's like a Macy's, a JCPenney's. And they go and get like $412 worth of clothes.
38 cents too.
38 cents.
Not factor that in for what the charge is.
And then take it to the register to this woman that they know, and she rings it up as $21.40.
Yeah.
Which she gives them to him as a discount. And in Florida, a discount at that rate is considered theft. And
Rachel Myrtle is the lady's
Rachel
name.
Myrtle.
Mm-hmm.
And I found it so messed up because an off-duty cop saw him and then recognized both of them, obviously.
Goddamn narc.
And busted them. And I just thought it was messed up because if you're 19, 20, 21, which these two kids were, and your friend's just like, dude, I'm working at Dillard's.
I'm going to hook you up.
Come in. I'm going to hook you up. I know how hard it is right now as a college student.
Yeah, and I mean, Cole's had a good NFL career, but like when you're the number 2 wide receiver, even on the best college football team, you don't make dick.
No.
You're just getting money from boosters. And
Exactly.
you're Peter Warrick. You're the what 80,000 fans come to Doak Campbell Stadium for every Saturday. And you don't make dick outside of what the boosters give you.
You were getting Dom hard on Saturdays, man. You should be getting some money. But that's the thing that I found so ridiculous is he shouldn't have been punished in that sense. Obviously, he did something wrong, but this is like some entrapment shit right here, bro.
It's kind of entrapment. B, and he readily admitted, yeah, that was a dick move on my part. Like,
it was just a stupid move.
It was a stupid move. But hey, NCAA football programs. You want to prevent shit like this? Why not pay these guys even like they're at a minimum wage job?
That's my thing that we come back to is just like, well, how else am I supposed to get clothes for this year? You know what I mean? Like, my socks have holes in them. Like, let's get our shit together, college football. Which, do you think he would have had a better career? And we're about to get into it. Actually, let's finish with 99.
Okay, so basically what happened was, as you said, $412.38 worth of clothes were purchased for $21.40, which I find hilarious that even why would you even add the 40 cents? Like,
well, I'm sure she rung it up as something.
Some sort of employee discount or something. But yeah, cop narcs on him, and both guys, Coles is gone. I mean, he's not even in.
I saw that he got
State.
kicked off. So,
but Warrick, luckily, and likely because he's balling out, he's charged with petty theft. Because this was like a grand larceny type of thing.
Originally, yes,
because of the amount. Because if you shoplift over a certain amount, depending on the state, it factors in. He pleads down to petty theft, which is a misdemeanor, and he's suspended for 2 games. But leading into this, he's just dominating. He has 36 catches for 508 yards and 4 touchdowns.
And like you were saying, so is Florida State. Florida State is number 1, and they're obviously the best team in the nation because they keep dominating even without Warrick for 2 games. That's what I found pretty interesting. Or without Warrick,
But he finishes the year, considering he missed 2 games, 71 catches, 934 yards, and 8 touchdowns. I mean, every time the guy touched the ball, something good happened. I mean, he was the best receiver in college football. They gave the award that year to Ron Bitch Tit Daines.
Nice.
Yeah, well, I mean, that guy was a flop, and Wisconsin handed the ball to him on every goddamn play. Yeah. Like, give me a break with that nonsense. So, regardless, Warrick doesn't win the Heisman, but the team runs the table and does so in pretty impressive fashion. I can't even think of a close game they played before that Sugar Bowl against Virginia Tech, and we'll get into the game a little bit and why Warrick, despite winning the MVP, is overlooked, because when everyone thinks of that game, unless you're a Seminoles fan, you don't think of Peter Warrick. You think of somebody else on the losing team.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was interesting. FSU that year was the first team to go wire to wire first in the voting. So, like, they're like, this is the best team preseason, and they proved it.
Well, I think everyone had kind of figured before that season, A, it's Florida State, so they have the pick of their litter of any freshman that they want.
Yep.
B, everybody's coming back. And C, they dropped a national championship game where a backup quarterback played where they honestly should have won.
Yeah.
And Warrick is coming back for his senior year. So, yeah, they go into the Sugar Bowl game against Virginia Tech. It's a 1-2 matchup. And Virginia Tech is kind of laying in the weeds, but they have this very exciting redshirt freshman quarterback playing for them named Ron Mexico. Oh, wait, that's Michael Vick. I'm sorry. I used his herpes medication alias. That's my bad.
God, man, come on.
This is what's the phrase I'm looking for? Dog murder, Mike Vick. This is pre-dog murder, Mike Vick. And,
I mean, that's a nice way to put it, but yes.
Yeah, a 19-year-old redshirt freshman, and things aren't really going well for the Noles. I mean, Warrick is kicking ass.
I was going to say, like, all the attention was on Vick, but Warrick was just like, no, man. I'm here to take this Sugar Bowl, and you're just like, fuck yeah.
Well, yeah, Warrick ends up with 3 touchdowns, 160 yards receiving, and a 55-yard punt return for a TD. But going into that fourth quarter, Virginia Tech is up 29-28 because Vick brings them back in like a Herculean video game, one-man type of thing. But Florida State is so talented, and Warrick is leading the charge. I mean, he's the marquee player in this game. I think it was Gary Danielson who was doing it, who said after he scored on one of the bomb plays, he was like, Cleveland Browns, are you watching? You should take this guy number 1. And then you're thinking, oh, they took Courtney Brown, and he wouldn't have been able to block to Tim Couch, episode 83, I think. You should go and listen.
Check it out.
You could have put a child. You could have drafted a child instead of Courtney Brown.
Different take that would have been if he went number 1.
That'd have been a crying game situation for where he ends up. I mean, this guy couldn't win, but we'll get into that.
That's what I mean.
But,
just one bag organization for another.
yeah, right. But he, wins a national championship. He comes back to school to do exactly what he wanted to do.
Exactly. That's why he came back, and that's exactly what they did.
The only thing that would have made that season better for him outside of the criminal charges is a Heisman Trophy.
Which he should have won, but I feel like every other time they give it out, you're like, yeah, but that should have went to this guy.
But I mean, when you look at what he accomplished in college, 98 consensus All-American, AP first team All-American, first team All-ACC, same thing for 99, and wasn't even invited for the Heisman ceremony.
Yeah, he got 6th or whatever.
The Downtown Athletic Club and their hoity-toityness told him no. But I want to bring this up as we lead into his pro career. He played 49 games in his career at Florida State. Do you know how many of those 49 games his team won? 45.
Yeah, that's insane.
That's amazing. I mean, at that point, the 90s, you can either say belonged to two programs. It was either Nebraska or Florida State. And particularly the late 90s here, because after those Nebraska teams win, then it's like a Florida State kind of run of dominance.
Right here, where Warrick is really the main receiver, which why we kind of bring back to him being one of the greatest college receivers ever, because, and this is where I want to bring this up, is his size becomes kind of a problem in the pros.
Yeah, and his 40 time is good. I think it was like 4.55. But if you're like 5'11", sub 200, and you're going to get drafted in the first round, you probably need to be sub 4.5. And that's kind of why I say when I watch his tape, he has speed. It's just he's quicker than fast, and space is what makes him the special player that he is. And as an offensive coordinator, and I think Mark Richt, who later had a real successful career head coaching Georgia, was his offensive coordinator at this time at Florida State. You have to recognize when you scheme your offense, particularly in pro football, but even at any level, how do I get the ball in my best player's hands, and in what plays do the best skills that this player has, what are they highlighted?
Yeah, how do we get the ball in Warrick's hand with a couple of yards of space?
So creatively.
Yeah.
I mean, not only as a receiver, it's like he's a bigger but slower Percy Harvin. That's kind of how Florida State they used him as a quarterback at times where he was throwing touchdown passes.
Yeah.
I mean, so like he will be a good fit in the NFL, like, kind of how we talk about quarterbacks like we did in the couch episode. He will be a dominant and good player in the NFL if he goes somewhere where creativity is high, where he can be used correctly. And that is not what happens.
Okay, now let's get into it.
With the fourth pick, and I mean, there's really three kind of wide receivers in this first round where everybody's kind of oohing and awing. It's Warrick out of Florida State, Travis Taylor out of Florida, massive draft bust, but then again, the Ravens had no quarterback situation to speak of, and Plexico Burress.
Yeah.
And I remember that year the Steelers were picking 8th, and I was thinking, like, please just get one of these guys. Part of me wanted them to draft Warrick, but also part of me knew that the previous year in the first round, they had drafted a similar type receiver in Troy Edwards. So I was thinking, like, well, it'd be good if they drafted Burress, but it would be even better if they took this guy named Brian Urlacher, who would have been a goddamn Yinzer hero.
Yeah.
And that kind of backfired. Burress had a great career with them. He just left for more money and then
shot himself.
Destroyed his potential Hall of Fame career in New York by... he probably wouldn't have served time if that happened in any other like city or state.
Yeah.
Like if he did that in Phoenix, the cops would have laughed at him and slapped him with a fine, but because it's New York City and guns are supposedly horrible, he got the book thrown at him, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, when you shoot yourself, you're.
Isn't that punishment enough for being a dumbass? Like, come on. But he goes to the Bengals, who are coming off a 99 season where, oh boy, not good. They flushed away that Akili Smith pick in that quarterback class we talked about. Actually, in that draft, much like the Browns, everyone in front of the Saints, they offered them their entire draft. And Cincinnati's like, nope, Akili Smith is our guy.
Yeah.
And now Scott Mitchell's fat ass is our guy. Let's roll with that. And that's the situation Peter Warrick walks into as a rookie with Cincinnati. He's kind of going to I don't even think he was their number one receiver that year. Darnay Scott, go Aztecs, I think was still there playing pretty well. But yeah, so they're just like, let's take college football's best player at number 4, which isn't bad, but you have no plan in place how to use him. You have nothing at the quarterback position. No offensive talent to speak of outside of Corey Dillon.
This is something I find so insane. Flat out, billion-dollar teams just don't have a plan in place for their round 1 pick. And it just kind of happens all the time. And they're just like, we're just going to take the best athlete and then not utilize them.
And this is kind of what pisses me off when people go into like draft bust talk. I mean, granted, there are huge draft busts.
Yes.
But those are
We've
guys,
talked on some.
Yeah, they will napalm the shit and self-destruct the shit out of their careers.
Yeah.
Some guys, they just go to, basically a situation where you can't win no matter how good you are.
Yeah.
You basically have to be somebody like Calvin Johnson Megatron to do anything, But his first year is decent. 51 catches, 592 yards, 4 touchdowns, punt return touchdown, and a rushing touchdown.
Yeah.
The issue is, and this is kind of a theme in his career, a lot of people, he's not making the explosive plays all the time like he is at Florida State. Because NFL defenses, they're kind of figuring him out. They're like, oh, teams in college feared him. We don't have to fear him because we have cornerbacks who know how to play press coverage and chuck him off the line
and can match
stick
speed
with him.
Yeah.
4.55 is not something corners struggle with even at this time in the NFL.
They might not be able to match his quickness, like you were saying, like his, lateral quickness, but they're going to be able to catch up when he,
Yeah, and people are bitching and complaining. And it's like, no, you need to design your offense to make space. And that's why I think he'd be a better player in today's league.
Oh, yeah.
Is with these spread formations, putting the pressure on the defenses. But Cincinnati's offense didn't really work at that time because everything runs through Corey Dillon and everything's lined up tight. And for good reason. I mean, Dillon's a borderline Hall of Fame running back. But, it's just a kind of a crappy situation for him. And Cincinnati is just horrendous at this point.
Yeah, just overall, they're...
Yeah. But 2001, he has 70 catches, but he only has 667 yards. So, I mean...
He's not getting the yardage.
Big plays.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not this explosive player that you're expecting him to be. And he only has 1 touchdown. And Cincinnati just continues to lose and continues to suck. And in 2002, 53 catches, 686 yards. And he has a career-high 6 touchdowns, but they are the worst team in the NFL. They clean house and fire everybody and bring Marvin Lewis in for 2003. This is how they get Carson Palmer. And I should note, he suffers a little bit of bad luck on his part, but it's actually some of the most intelligent drafting that those idiots ever did is in 2001, after they took Warrick and his FSU teammate Ron Duggins, both receivers in 2000, they take Chad Johnson at pick, I think, 36.
Yeah.
And then they take his OSU teammate towards the end of the 7th round in TJ Hushmanzada. And good on you, Bengals. Granted, you only had to watch one team play. Also, one of our episodes, 2000 Oregon State Beavers. Get on it. Listen. Fun team. Warrick is kind of like pushed aside heading into 2003 because Johnson is, eventually becomes one of the most dominant receivers in football for about half a decade.
Well, I wonder,
as the number 1 guy.
I wonder if they're looking at Johnson like, yes, this is going to be our number 1, and Warrick is going to be our solid number 2.
And that's perfectly
Which is fine.
And that was the plan.
Yes.
And in 2003, also has a pretty good season because the team kind of rallies around Marvin Lewis. He has 78 catches, almost 900 yards, and 7 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And he had a great game that year. He had a punt return for a touchdown and a bomb TD. I think Kansas City was 9-0 and they went to Cincinnati, and Cincinnati beat them. I mean, they beat the hell out of them. And Kansas City was the number 1 seed in the AFC that year heading into the playoffs. So Cincinnati's finally turning things around, and you look at 2004 and you're like, man, Warrick, God, what could he do with Chad Johnson? And then an injury happens.
Well, to think of their receiving core as Chad Johnson, Warrick, TJ Houshmandzadeh, it's kind of scary, like looking at the guys' careers. Yeah. And then, like you said, 2004, an injury happens, and this is exactly what I feel like with some guys, where some guys get injured and you're like, he's going to be back in 6 months and he's going to be good. This injury was like, oh yeah, that's not the same player.
It devastated his career, and in the NFL, just because you're injured, you don't win your job back. And TJ Houshmandzadeh, to his credit, was now the number 2 receiver.
Well, I want to say this because I feel like they could have kept him as an overpaid number 3, whatever you want to call it, and then, kind of seen what they did. But at the end of the season, they just flat out cut him because I feel like his injury just like took away whatever.
It did in part, but another reason that I think that they went in a different direction is you're not going to keep a guy on the team who's not himself. Not that he's a problem or anything in the locker room. You're not going to keep a guy on the roster and on the salary cap. And I think in the 3rd round that year, they drafted. He was probably a better athlete than both Johnson and Houshmandzadeh, the late Chris Henry.
Oh, okay.
And Henry became their 3rd receiver, and at a much cheaper price.
Yep.
And they had no use for him, so Warrick had to go to Seattle in 2005. Luckily for him, even though he doesn't get to play very much, he's on a winning team again.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. He never really captures that form of that first, second receiver on the team.
Yeah, and oddly enough, I remember they make it to Super Bowl 40, and I'm watching it, Steelers and Seahawks, and Pittsburgh has to punt because I don't think they made a first down for the first quarter and a half of that game. And on the first one, it's like Peter Warrick deep to receive. I'm like, he still plays?
Yeah.
I had no idea. And he had a long punt return in that game that was called back by a penalty. But you're right. It's not the same guy.
Yes.
And then he goes through a series of tryouts and this journeyman career through semi-pro football.
And practice teams.
Yeah.
So he pretty much is on the practice team every year and just literally can't break through. And then I think he goes to Arena, right?
Yeah, so 2006, he worked out for both the Giants and the Bengals again. Didn't like what they saw. Signed with the Las Vegas team of the Arena Football League, but didn't even show up for it in 2007.
Yep.
I mean, May 2008, tried out with the Montreal Alouettes, cut after a month. 2009, again in the with the Bloomington Extreme. I love these Arena Football
I know,
League
they're
names.
so silly.
They're like the ESPN Ocho names of the Indoor Football League. Only one season, doesn't stick with them. 2011, the Cincinnati Commandos of another Indoor Football League, and never played again.
Well, he said he didn't want to play for them because he wanted to wear underwear while he played. So,
yeah, that's true. I mean, they got.
I got to respect that last one.
Yeah. But no, so that was the professional career of a guy. And that's why I say when I watch him,
not a draft bust,
just in a very, and he was performing. That's why I always say 2003. You're like, finally we see it. Finally, the pressure's taken off because there's another number 1 wide receiver. He can get open. There's less guys dedicated to him.
Well, I feel like it's just like how it was at FSU, where instead, the only thing that was different was he's the number 2 instead of number 1, but they were bringing him on kind of slowly, and he was almost working in that system. But I think overall, he couldn't work in that system because...
Well, you know what the damn shame of all of it is? From 2000 to 2003... the best quarterback he played for with that team was John Kitna.
Yeah, that too.
If he comes in 2004 and does not sustain that injury, that is Carson Palmer's rookie year. He probably balls out. He probably steals a lot of playing time, if not all of it from Hushmanzada.
Well, that's what I mean as
relegated to, number 3.
Well, that's what I mean as the 1, 2, 3, and they're almost rotating that 2-3 if Hushmanzada's, because I mean we see him have a fucking ridiculous season that year, but that's what is so disappointing about these injuries, but it's so common in football that you almost get, you're just like, yeah, that's football.
I feel like it had to hurt him watching Carson Palmer's career, just going like, son of a bitch.
Just like, I could have caught that.
Yeah.
I could have caught that.
But you watch his college highlights, and as I said before, he would have been deadly now. Like, much like we said with Charlie Ward, if he played in this era as opposed to the era that he played in, he would have been so much better suited to put up the types of numbers that he was capable of putting up.
Well, let me, when I was researching this guy, the thing that always came back was reliable hands and extremely smart. So if you think of like that guy on...
Oh, his football
I don't
IQ
know,
was great.
The Patriots or one of these teams, even like Kansas City now, with unbelievably quick. You know what I mean?
You know what's hilarious, though? Watch him go to New England in like the mid-2000s, and they don't draft any white slot receivers. It's just black guys because of Peter Warrick.
Yeah. And they're just like, no, yeah, we're getting more of these guys. Like, but that's what I mean is like you see these guys who aren't draft busts, but don't make it in the pros.
No, and it's unfortunate, but the word bust should be reserved for people like Akili Smith, not Peter Warrick.
Exactly.
And he was such a good player at Florida State, in fact. Now, I did want to mention on September 4th, 2018, his number 9's retired alongside Charlie Ward and a number of other gentlemen.
Well, one of the best college receivers of all time.
Yeah. And one of the worst discounts at Dillard's guys of all time, but one of the best in college football at wide receiver, Peter Warrick.
Hey everybody, this is just a stock message at the end of every episode. We hope you enjoyed whatever athlete and or team that episode was about. Just want to say, give us a quick follow on all social media. We have a YouTube channel, the Sports Experience Podcast, and we're on Instagram, DiTolla Dominic, and myself, C. Quinn Comedy. So give us a follow all around. We're always recording right here at Engle Studio. Thank you all very much.